Omini, welcome to the 7th edition of the Innovation C bi-weekly digital conference. My name is Luc. I'm excited to be your host for tonight. Joining me as a co-host is Stacey McDonald. You'll see her in a bit during the digital roundtable. So today's conference is called Creating a New Socio-Economic Foundation. Anybody who has played with Legos or who has built a building knows that the core piece to build something stable is having a strong foundation. Without this foundation, you can build a beautiful building, but in the end, it's going to fall down. The same goes for a person. If you have a strong foundation, if you have good values, if you have good health, you can become something great. You can become the best version of yourself. But if your foundation isn't strong, it's really hard to build yourself up. The same counts for a nation. If you have a nation that has a strong foundation, good ethics, good agreements, people that support and help each other, there's no limit. You can reach anything. But if there's already bumps and scratches in the foundation, it's really hard to build something pure and beautiful. So today we're discussing how we can create a strong foundation. And I'm really happy to have you here. Welcome, Dila Bontani. So today, we're going to use a different format than normally. For the people that have been here before for the previous 6 events, normally we have 4 presentations. Today we're going to lower that number down to 3. This means that we have a little bit more time to do some Q&A after each session. So if you have questions for the speaker or anybody else, you can shoot it right away, and we have about 5 to 7 minutes after each presentation to go into these questions. So who do we have today? First up, we're going to have Joeri Oltheten. He's an economist and I would say entrepreneur and educator who specializes in Doughnut economics. It's a new fundamental way of looking at how the economy works and should work. Afterwards, we have Danielle. She's the founder of Montessori Curaçao, who is going to reinvent education on the island. The term sounds quite difficult, Montessori. You have no idea what it is, but she's going to explain it in simple terms and explain why this new approach to learning is much better for a strong foundation for each individual. Finally, we have Gwendell Mercelina, who is an entrepreneur and politician, who is going to realign our beliefs on politics. Especially over the past months, a lot of people have been saying, not per se negative things, but the politicians have been in the spotlight and we all have an opinion about it. And I think Gwendell is the right person to show us how we can do better. All these topics have something in common, and that they are large systems that we're all part of, but we have little influence on. As a child, you don't get to decide which educational system you follow. You just get put into this basisschool, and then you go to either HAVO or VWO or whatever the system decides for you, whatever role you can fit within this larger system. Such as the economy. Maybe you would want to be a social entrepreneur, and you find it really hard to be able to make a living within this competitive monetary system and this competitive economic system. So today it's all about reimagining and thinking outside of the box and thinking, are these systems made for us? Is this a system we want to be part of in the 21st century, especially in this new decade? Do we want to take these systems for given and continue to build on them? Or are we now ready to make a new system, a system that works for us? So before going to the first presentation, I have a question for all speakers, for all people here. It's a simple but deep question. Which system that you're part of would you like to change radically, and why? So which of the systems that you were born into or that you're part of right now would you like to see changed completely? You think this system is just old, it doesn't work, we can't rely on this anymore, we need something completely new. Could be the economy, it could be, just bring it up. Let us know in the comment section so we can feel where your thoughts are and what your opinions are. See here, someone said medicine. I'm lucky enough to not know a lot about medicine. I've been mostly healthy, but I can imagine that once you get stuck to it, it's a system that keeps getting you back in. The system of cooperation, definitely, Stephen. This is also part of innovation. See, it's really creating bridges for collaboration, for cooperation and teamwork. Well, it seems Danielle and Gwendell are going to have a lot of fun. A lot of people saying education and government. And I think it's important to really make a distinction between government and governance. The way we govern certain things or the way we govern a whole nation. All right, Joeri mentioned monetary systems, so I think it's time to invite him on stage so he can further enlighten that view. Let me. Joeri, feel free to join me. While we're waiting on Joeri, you can continue to answer the question. There you are. Welcome, Joeri.
Thank you, Luke. Thank you for having me on this wonderful platform. I'm really excited to be here today. And hi to everybody who's listening and watching.
I'm really happy to have you. I think, especially in the past months, I'm sensing more and more fear under entrepreneurs, but also under people that are just working in a company. Fear for the economy, fear for the negative economics effect of COVID-19. I mean, you're an economist yourself, and you mentioned the monetary system, so you think it's much deeper than just our local economy.
Yes. As a matter of fact, I do. I think that the interesting thing is if you look around the world, that for centuries we've had the same monetary systems, regardless of the political or economical systems that countries had or have. And now this last decade or two, you see more and more alternative solutions coming up, such as complementary currencies or digital currencies or both. And I think that's a really, really good development because the way our monetary system is set up, it creates scarcity and it's not available for large portions of the population. And the incentives that it gives are counterproductive. So I think that's really important to look at the monetary system as something that is needed to be changed.
Nice. So I'm jumping in a little bit. Hi everyone, I'm Stacy. I'm Luke's co-host tonight, or today. He had some internet difficulties, so here I am. But Joeri, thank you for that introduction. We already know each other a little bit, but I'm excited to hear what you can share with us and all the listeners today. Look, there he is.
I made it back. I'm not sure what happened. Thank you so much, Stacey, for filling in. I think the one question I had for Joeri, and that's kind of before going into his presentation, he mentioned the monetary system, which is much deeper than the small local economy that most people care about. That's also the system, the scope of the system that people can still see and sense. They understand kind of what's happening to their neighbor business or to maybe even on a national level, like, oh, the government is spending this or this. I think it's interesting that you mentioned the monetary system, which is much deeper and even much larger. Maybe so large that for a lot of people it's almost impossible to see. It's like having an elephant in the room and you're like, oh no, but the problem is the leg. But maybe the problem is not just the leg. The problem is you have an elephant in your room, which shouldn't be there.
True.
So I'm really excited to hear more about Doughnut economics and your thoughts. And I'm eager to get more into this conversation with you after your talk.
Cool, me too.
Same
So I just introduce myself and get things going?
Yeah, the stage is all yours. Thank you very much. Good luck.
Thanks, guys. So yeah, my name is Joeri Oltheten, economist, entrepreneur, musician. I do a couple of things, and basically, I think my purpose is to do things that contribute to uplifting humankind, and at the same time being in balance with our natural surroundings. And my interest in economics started from a young age. When I was a young boy, I'll tell you a little story because I used to live in Peru, in South America. I was around 7 or 8 years old, and I had a great time there. I was also shocked to see that while some people were extremely rich, financially rich, with big houses and swimming pools and all of that, other people were so poor that they would live on the streets in cardboard boxes. And for me, this was just incredible, and I couldn't understand how this could be possible, and I wanted to know who was responsible for this, because as a kid, in my case at least, you always think that somebody is responsible for something, and nobody could really answer the question of whose responsibility it was to make sure that these people could have a decent living. So then a couple of years passed. I still was a bit frustrated, but as a kid, you tend to forget. But when I was about to go to high school, I found out that I would be there would be a subject there called economics, and that was supposed to deal with these type of phenomena. And I was just thrilled about this. And I was digging into it, and I saw that the term economics actually comes from the Greek word oikonomia, which means running a household. Initially at the smallest level, so really a family household, and later on a state level or the city state, as the Greeks used to have. And I thought, well, this is interesting because obviously, if you run a household, you want to take care of the members of the household, and you want to make sure that they all get their fair share and that nobody's left behind. So that all that sounded great, and I was just so excited to learn more about this. But during my high school career, so to speak, in all the years that I had this economic subject, there was nothing to be discussed about inequality or about distribution of income or wealth. We never even touched these subjects. We never spoke about households. So I thought, what went wrong? It was all about calculations, and it was about models and statistics and curves. And it was a bit strange to me because they called it the social science, which was supposed to be, about people and describing behavior and so forth. But it was treated, or it was disguised as an exact science, like mathematics or physics. So then I thought, okay, still I didn't get a good idea of what it actually meant. So I decided to go and study economics after I finished high school. And unfortunately, I got even more disappointed during my studies because, especially in the first year, this whole approach of economics based on systematic methods and numbers and calculations just continued. And it was basically all about profit maximization. It was about growth. That was a word that was used a lot of times, a lot about growth. And then I thought, well, maybe the whole concept, the whole idea of economics has just drifted away from its initial meaning. And I did some research, and I found out that the way that we look at economics in our modern times is what the Greeks used to call grammatistics. Grammatistics is not about taking care of a household. Grammatistics is the art of acquiring wealth. But that's a whole different approach, because if you're just focusing on acquiring wealth, then this wealth becomes a goal in itself. It's not a means to an end, but it becomes an end in itself. And that makes the whole thing change. It has a lot of implications, because if that's just your only focus, then what does it mean? That means that people will be left behind. That means that there will be scarcity, there will be competition. And that, as a matter of fact, is the basis of how we look at economics. Because if you look at the last 100 years, for instance, you see that while we have made significant progress when it comes to life expectancy or extreme poverty or more access to drinking water, we have made a lot of progress. But on the other hand, we still have inequality that's growing. We still have a lot of people that don't have enough to live from, and we have financial crashes and economical crashes that just continuously happen and that we cannot seem to prevent. And at the same time, we have a degradation of our planet's ecosystems. So I thought maybe the assumptions that we have of economics are too narrow. And the thing is that if you look at how the science of economics started, there were these assumptions about human behavior that were so narrow that it's almost a caricature of human behavior. Because what we say, we call it the Homo economicus. The Homo economicus is a fantasy. He's extremely rational. He knows all the prices. He is all by himself. He doesn't look at what other people are doing. He doesn't care about nature. He doesn't have empathy, and he has unlimited needs and wants. That's the assumption we have, and that's the model of people that we base our economic policies on. And it's not just in Curaçao, but that's worldwide. And the thing with these models is, even though they're simplifications of what happens in actuality, if you just work with models long enough, then the behavior turns out to correspond with the caricature that the models describe. This has been they've done some research on this, that economic students all across the world seem to show more of this behavior, let's call it antisocial behavior, because that's the thing that we're programmed with. And in that sense, Curaçao is no different. If you look at economics in Curaçao and the way we understand economics, there's usually just one metric that shows up, and that metric is GDP. GDP as in gross domestic product, which is the market value of all goods and services that a country produces in a certain period of time, usually in a year. Now, if you look at GDP in Curaçao, you see that over the last years, GDP has not grown. And even though we focused on this forever, we don't seem to be able to make it work. And people say, okay, but no, it's not growing. It's not a problem because still we're relatively rich. Because if you divide the GDP of Curacao by the number of inhabitants, then you will see that it's relatively high, especially compared to other places in the region. But that doesn't say anything about the inequality. And the same goes for income. You can say the average income of people in Curacao is relatively high. But if you have, let's say you have 10 people and 8 of them make $10 and 2 of them make $100, then the 10 people together make $280, right? Now, if you look at the average of these 10 people, each one of them, the average is $28, but 8 of them only make $10. So the average income is a misrepresentation of the actual situation. Because if you would look, if you would put these 10 people in a line, and you would look at the 5th and the 6th person, so the median representatives of the society, they're just making $10. They're not making 28 at all. And the same goes for Curaçao. And in societies where there's a lot of inequality, you tend to have a misrepresentation of the actual situation by just looking at the numbers. So there's an inflation of the numbers that we use. And so that's basically where we are now. You know, we have this GDP, this fixation with GDP. We need to grow. We always talk about growth. And then it's either balanced growth or sustainable growth, but it's still all growth. And we just assume that that's just the way to do it. But the thing is this, if you look at let me just show you one slide. Hold up. Where is it? It's here. Yes. Can you see this? Yeah, you can. So this is the idea. You know, you have GDP, and over time it just grows and it grows and it grows. But it doesn't stop. There's no end to it. So there's infinite growth in our models and systems, but our planet is not infinite. Our resources are finite, which means that there is friction there. If we want to grow forever, but we have a planet with limited resources, then how do we do it? It's impossible. That's also one of the reasons why people talk about, hey, let's go and conquer Mars or other planets, because we are aware of the fact that the way that we look at economics is not sustainable at all. And the same goes for Curaçao. You know, we had a couple of really strong economic pillars in the past, such as the refinery, we had the financial services, and we were just getting started with tourism. But then we saw that one by one, these pillars were collapsing. The refinery is not working as well as it used to. The regulations concerning financial services have changed, and tourism is virtually non-existent at the moment, but we're starting back up in a couple of weeks, but we just have to see how that's going to go. So what do? We focus on GDP, we're not growing with economic pillars that we cannot really count on. And at the same time, these pillars that we value, they all have some sort of outside-in approach. If you look at the refinery, we're looking at oil from abroad. If you're looking at tourism, we're looking at people from abroad. If you're looking at financial services, we're looking at money from abroad. And we thought that these were pretty stable, but they're not. And at the same time, we are more and more aware of the fragility of our own economy, because we saw that through the whole Corona crisis situation, that unemployment went up, poverty went up, tourism disappeared. So where do we go from now? Where do we go from here? Sorry, that's I think the main question. And some people will say, well, what you have to do, you just have to produce more, become more productive, or just have more people live on the island. And becoming more productive is pretty difficult. You know, we're talking about a smart nation. We're not there yet. We're cutting educational budgets, so it's difficult to give people a proper education so they can be more productive. And if you talk about population growth, well, that's been on the agenda for years. We have immigration, but at the same time, we have a lot of people leaving the island, so still the population is more or less stable. And the question is, do you really want to have a more densely populated island? Because if you look at an island like Barbados, which is more or less the same size, but double the population of Curaçao, they deal with much bigger environmental challenges than we do. So what's the idea here? And well, while I was looking at this, I see an option is to start investing in our people. That's a really good point. We have to start, I completely agree that we have to start investing in our people, but if we don't have a framework or a model to stimulate that, then it's not going to work. Like I said, the GDP is so narrow. It doesn't take households into account, for instance. I mean, look at our households. Look at things that happen without monetary transactions. They're extremely valuable. If you just look at parents raising their children, for instance, that represents huge value for society, but we don't see that in GDP either. Or people that just swap goods without any money, that also represents value. And so you can just go on and on and on. So this whole GDP thing, it really has to go. But what are the alternatives? So I started looking around, and all of a sudden I came across this new model, which is called Doughnut economics. Actually, a visual concept that I liked very, very much. I'm going to show it to you. This is one of the ways to show the donut and the way it works. So you can see there's a big difference here, right? This is the curve that we always see. It's growing and it becomes more over time. And here you see a completely different visual concept, which is a circle. And if you look at it, you see it says social foundation and ecological ceiling. So the whole idea behind the donut is that we have to look at two aspects of our society. We have to look at human needs, and we have to look at the ecological ceiling. So the human needs, that's the social foundation. We have to make sure that people, you see that there's a nice icon here of donut. So we need to make sure that people have enough water, food, health, energy, networks, etc. If they don't have enough, there's a shortfall of it, and then you get to the hole in the donut. You don't want to be there. And on the other hand, if we put too much pressure on our nature and our ecology, then we get to points where there's too much pressure, and you get things like air pollution, biodiversity loss, land conversion, etc. So, and if you get in the space in between, the sweet spot, then that's where you're good, and that's where we can thrive. So the whole idea behind this donut is to ask different questions, not to ask the question, how can we grow? Which assumes that growth is what we need, but they ask questions like, how can we make sure that all people can thrive, and how can we make sure that we respect the boundaries of nature? Now, this is a model that was created for a global economy, and obviously we're not that far yet because it's relatively new, and there are a lot of people that really want to stick to the old ways of doing business and dealing with economics. But at the same time, there is a challenge to try to scale this model down to a local scale. And the good thing is that there are some cities across the world that are working with this already. And in their cases, it's usually top down. You can see this going on in Amsterdam, for instance, in Philadelphia and in Portland. Recently, we spoke to the people that were involved with this in Amsterdam. And they told us that, as a matter of fact, the city council is the one that really pushes this. And they are really enthusiastic about the donut and applying it on a city level. Yeah, let me see some comments here. Yeah, the proof is in the eating. Correct. Now, why was it interesting for me? Because we don't really have a government that wants to implement the donut as of yet. They are talking about it. But on the other hand, I saw a lot of initiatives that are completely in line with this whole idea of the donut, because the donut is all about distribution and regeneration. And then also self-sufficiency. So I saw on this island, this beautiful island of ours, there were a lot of projects that involve food and agriculture and sustainable ways of dealing with that. Just recently, our host, one of our hosts, just launched a local digital currency that also fits completely within the whole donut model. People that are making more and more finished products using natural resources without exploiting nature, that also fits within the model. So this is not something utopian. This is not something that should happen over the next years. No, this is something that's really happening in practice today, but we don't have a framework as of yet to support that and to make it more visible for people. This one I came up with the idea to set up a donut task force. I just called some people out online and asked if they wanted to contribute. And not just people with the economic background, but people from all walks of life, people that work with water or doing projects in agriculture, or that are looking at new ways of living, looking at the built environment, looking at peace and justice, looking at social equity. You know, it's really broad. And the good thing is that I got a lot of responses. So apparently a lot of more people were interested in this. We formed a task force and we started formulating a couple of questions. And the questions are these four. It's a bit small. You guys can read it. So if you look at the donut, there's a local and a global level to look at it, and at the same time you can look at social and ecological components. So if you look at local and social, where it says one, the question would be, what would it mean for the people of Curaçao to thrive? Local and ecological, what would it mean for Curaçao to thrive within its natural habitat? And then if you look at the global impact of what we're doing locally, what would it mean for Curaçao to respect the well-being of people worldwide? And what would it mean for Curaçao to respect the health of the whole planet? I think these are really important questions to ask. And apparently there are more people that are interested in asking these questions and looking for answers. So we want to use the donut as a tool for transformative action. And at the same time, it would be great if we can make this also a tool for policy making in Curaçao in the really near future. Yes, any questions, please feel free to ask. And so we're basically pioneering here. The difference with the cities I mentioned, like Amsterdam and Philadelphia, is that we're a nation, even though we're linked to the kingdom, but we still function as a nation. So that implies that there are more challenges for us because we only have one government level. And at the same time, seeing all these great initiatives, how about we try to create a portrait, an island portrait where we show the donut, and for each component we look at targets, what we want to reach, and also what people are doing at the moment. That's where we are right now. So if you look at, let me just go back. If you look at, for instance, in the social foundation, you see food. Now, food is always very important because it's the basis of life, right? So we ask a question, for instance, how much of what we consume locally is actually produced locally? And then you see it's about 3, 4 to 5% of what we consume. And we set a target for that. We say, okay, maybe in 5 years it could become 25%. Then we identify projects that could help us reach that target. We want to create a digital platform where for each one of these components you can see targets and the actual situation. You can link that with existing projects. You can upload your own project. You can link that with people that want to be involved as investors, as people that want to contribute their knowledge, even governments, obviously. And that could be the island portrait of Curaçao within its donut, a living image that changes over time, that stimulates, that shows where we are, and that gives direction to our economic policy. That's it for now. I just want to ask everybody who's interested in this to let me know if you want to join in whatever way possible. You're more than welcome. Next year we have the elections here, and I think this is also a great tool to put pressure on any political party wanting to run this island. Thank you very much.
Wonderful, Joeri. Thank you so much for that. We have a couple of questions from the audience. Little heads up, we're a little bit over time, so we're going to only take 2 or 3 questions, and then we can answer them later at the end. So the first one from Dila is the donut model is based on sustainability, but the less income people have, the more concerned they are in fulfilling their basic needs, and less concerned about sustainability. How do you bring this broad base of people on board to change their mindset?
Well, the interesting thing is a good question. The interesting thing is, in my experience, that a lot of times when people have low income levels, there's also something called psychology of scarcity, which means that people tend to look more at the short term, not at the long term, and they tend to make irrational decisions because of the pressure of everyday life. Now, if you want to save money, for instance, concerning food, then it's a good idea to plant food in your garden. So that's a sustainable way of looking to create food for yourself. That's also part of this whole system that we're looking at, and a great way to even produce more so you can sell it. So the whole idea of I don't have a lot of money, I cannot be sustainable, that's not true. We just tend to make the wrong decisions because we don't know a lot of times that there are options. So that's why it's important to show people that it actually is possible to plant your own food in your garden at relatively low cost and be pretty much self-sufficient.
Wonderful. Yeah, and I think that is well aligned with how you gather support. I think it's showing and getting kind of the word of mouth going that, hey, I started living this way of life and I'm now more abundant. I have more than I had before. And I think as soon as people start realizing that, as soon as the influencers, for example, catch on to, hey, I used to have 200 guilders at the end of the month, and now I have 500, and I have a plant, and I have more happy children, or whatever. I mean, I think this is the way. And so I think that answers Francois' question. Sorry if I pronounced your name wrong, Francois. Maybe before you go, I have one thing to add, and that goes back to the beginning of your presentation and your check-in question. You mentioned the monetary system.
Mhm.
So how would you envision, or do you think it's possible for a donut economy to exist built on a foundation of a, let's say, a monetary system that's not per se aligned with the vision of a donut economy?
That's a very good question, and I think that it's pretty difficult to change the system as it is right now. On the other hand, it is possible to have alternative monetary systems together. If you look at history, I don't want to, take too much
Take
of
it
you
over.
guys' time. But if you look at history, there are a couple of civilizations where they used to have two types of money that existed at the same time. One type of money that was used for big transactions, money that you could store that would gain value over time. Let's call it yang money because it's like masculine energy. And the same thing you would have yin money, which is money that loses value over time, which is used more for investments in real products and services. Now, two examples of civilization that use these: the Egyptians, which built the pyramids, and in the Middle Ages when they built the cathedrals. So what you are doing, for instance, Luke, and other people, if you come up with local currencies that stimulate and incentivize people to spend their money locally, the money goes around much more often and it stays on the island, creating much more value than if you would spend it on something that just goes abroad. So let's start with introducing other systems next to the one we already have before we dismantle the first one at all.
Yeah.
And that's the new socio-economic foundation. So thank you very much, Joeri. Let's go deeper into this at the end of the presentations. We're a little bit over time already. Thank you so much again. Thank you,
Don't
Stacey, for
forget
joining
to
me.
share your contacts, Joeri. I think we are excited to get in touch with you.
I'll start typing. Thanks, guys.
I'll start. Wonderful. All right. Thank you very much, Joeri. You can stay, Stacey. Let's invite Danielle on stage.
Yeah.
And I'm a bit flabbergasted by that presentation. I mean, we're both part of the group, of the working group, but I think hearing it from Joeri really added another dimension to it.
Absolutely.
Like, oh wait,
yeah.
Danielle, welcome.
Hi, thank you.
Hi, Danielle.
Hi, everyone.
Are you ready?
I
Stacey,
am.
do it.
Sorry. It's always difficult to do things like these online, I think. But how are you doing?
I'm doing great. How's everyone?
Doing good. Excited to have you here. So we just, were you inspired by the presentation of Joeri?
I actually was, and I want to contribute any way I can.
Awesome. That's really exciting. So you're going to talk about the educational system. I think Luke already gave a nice introduction in the beginning. So I don't want to take up a lot of your time, also because, hearing you speak is way more fun. So that being said, I would just say, let's go into your presentation. I'm very excited to hear what your vision is for a new part of, a new form of education on the island. So let's hear it.
Okay, great. Thank you. I'm sharing my slides. And I'm so excited to be here today. I feel very privileged to be able to talk to this amazing group of people about education. It's one of my favorite topics because it's so broad. You can approach it from different angles and it impacts everything. I think someone mentioned that in the comments as well, and I agree. Health, well-being, opportunities in life, economics, and so basically everything. And I believe as an island, we're currently at a crossroads. And education is not only a very current topic, but it's of defining importance. And what I want to do today is start hopefully a meaningful discussion about the type of education we want for our island and how we can go about implementing that. So before I go into education, I want to tell everyone a little bit about myself. I am the co-founder and chair of the Montessori School Foundation, and the foundation had two aims: one, to introduce the Montessori lifestyle on the island, which we are doing with a great team with a lot of support, and the next is championing that lifestyle. And I'm gonna talk a little bit about the benefits and why it's such an amazing philosophy to follow. I'm the current head of school at the Montessori school. It's the first authentic Montessori environment on the island, and my team and I, we work hard every day to maintain that, and it's amazing just to be part of this. Is great. And I'm also a parent or co-parent to this amazing 4-year-old that you see on the screen. Being a parent to her is exhilarating and a transformative experience as well. So how do you become a Montessorian? Everyone has their own journey, and I kind of want to tell you about mine. I was born and raised on the island, and in our home, education was very, very important. We were always told how a diploma helps you earn a good living, ensure you become a critical thinker, and generally set you up for success. I was very excited to attend school, and the idea of going to this magical place where you will learn everything you need to know to become this amazing adult really appealed to me. So I did all my homework, I got good grades, I trusted that when I graduated somewhere in the future, I would know things and I'll be this amazing person that I'm supposed to be. But then at 25, I landed my first job as a trainee lawyer, and it became painfully clear that I did not possess the right skills and attitude. And by that time, I had 2 masters under my belt, so that was kind of disappointing. So wait, I'm not done yet. So it was such a shock after years of conventional education to have someone tell me that I didn't have the skills or the attitude, and I need to take initiative, be hungry for knowledge, go and seek it independently. Don't just sit there, do something. And if you don't know something, go find out, question everything. And that's when I realized a few things, actually, that I did possess all those skills. And that was my education that I got at home and not at school. At school, I had to wait for others to catch up. Before we move on to the next subject, I was discouraged to question things and encouraged to just accept things as they were. But at home, we were doers and learners. We discussed politics, religion, the arts. We appreciated nature. So it was, I had all the skills, but I started wondering what happens to those people who don't have this amazing education at home and that can tap into that when, they become an adult and start participating in real life. And I really wanted to build that magical place. But I didn't know how. I didn't know where to begin. But when I became a parent, and that's an intense transformation, I was introduced to the how of this, and that's Montessori. But before we get into what Montessori is, I want to talk a little bit about what education is so that we can all appreciate why Montessori is so amazing. Most of us tend to think about education as what happens between the 4 walls of a classroom. That's a narrow definition, but a broader definition is a continuous process that begins from birth and ends with death. So what are the functions of education? To me, the most important function of education is socialization. Newborns are born, they have no knowledge about the society they are born in. They must be introduced to the culture, its values, norms, social skills that will fit their roles now and later as adults. But education also helps with the development of qualities in an individual, such as habits, traits, attitude, and ideals. So, like in my case, I had two sets of qualities, and they were opposite. And yeah, that is just part of my contradicting nature, I guess. And it impacts individual behavior because it transmits a way of life. So, in that sense, I was taught at home to do things, learn things, take action. And at school, I was taught to be passive, wait it out, and wait until everyone catches up with you because you need to be kind of like everyone else. And to be honest, I still struggle with it a lot, this internal contradiction. And that really shows me that education brings a natural and lasting change in an individual's reasoning and it's his or her ability to achieve a goal. So education is very, very important. So I just want to talk a little bit about research, scientific research, and I can share all my sources later with everyone. But scientific research has shown that the human brain undergoes marked developments before the age of 6, and these developments seem permanent. It also shows that neural development proceeds in a hierarchical fashion with later attainments built on earlier ones. That means that your foundation determines many outcomes in your life. So education in a broad sense builds this foundation, and whatever experience the child has in those early years, the good, the bad, and the ugly, it will become his or her foundation, and it will impact his or her life. You can change, you can grow, and hopefully many do, but you will need to build on this foundation that you have. So ideally, we want children to have a solid foundation, and a way to achieve that is to take the individual as they are born, give them the quote unquote right experiences, a variety of largely positive experiences, and especially the ones that cultivate the child's talents and supports other areas that they might not be naturally proficient in. And so to support the child to become their better selves. It might seem like a bit abstract or impossible, but trust me, there's a way. And I found that the Montessori education, the lifestyle, is what will get someone there. And we were just talking right before we started the webinar, and it's not a new method. So we have evidence that it works. So a little bit about the person behind the Montessori method. Her name is Maria Montessori, and she was a scientist. She was born 150 years ago. This year, 2020, we're supposed to celebrate her birth and her legacy, but the pandemic got a bit in the way. She specialized in the intellectual and cognitive development of children, and her progressive view of children was very much ahead of her time, and she was a pioneer in social reform. And her scientific observations are basically what we now call the Montessori method. You can visit the website montessori150.org to learn more about her and her legacy. Otherwise, I'll be talking for hours about her. So what is Montessori? Like I said, the method evolved from Maria Montessori scientific research in the field of child development, and it's been around for over 100 years. Actually, when we started the Montessori school, it was, I think, 112 years after she started her first classroom. And, there are many examples of successful individual in terms of what we consider nowadays successful, who have a Montessori background. So it's a science-backed, time-tested philosophy, a method that supports children's natural development, building the capability to become productive, fulfilled adults who contribute to the world. She developed a set of hands-on, self-correcting learning materials in combination with a life philosophy that aims to support the children's natural development. And all of this, believe it or not, is achieved without rewards, punishment, grades, while children are encouraged to explore personal interests and engage with other people. It works for all personality types, all abilities, provided you have the right environment and the right adult, of course. So a little bit about the method. It's child-focused. And the basic is that adults trust that the child knows their path to development. Montessorians all believe, I think, that children are capable human beings with a desire to learn, provided they have the space to do so. This trust and respect for children is reflected in the entire curriculum, where kids very young are exposed to what we consider, from a traditional point of view, very complex concepts. And it's also very clear in the classrooms. There are cozy environments with child-height sinks and shelves at exactly the right heights, toilets they can access. There are rich experiences that are balanced by beauty and order, and all work is displayed in an attractive way and arranged in an orderly fashion. So who wouldn't love entering a space where that is specifically designed for you to learn? You would feel special and confident, and that would definitely, I think, help with, your development and your self-confidence. The Montessori method is also focused on helping families, help parents raise children who are morally, emotionally, and behaviorally prepared for the real world. Research has shown that what most parents want is for their children to grow up, to know who they are, be proud of who they are. They want them to be kind to others and help others. They want to have a sense of what's right and wrong, and consistently choose what is right. And they want their child to be accountable for their actions, be responsible people who are financially independent. We did a very fun exercise, I think in 2018, with a positive discipline educator who visited the island. And so the parents who attended gave the same exact answers as anywhere else in the world. So these things are what parents universally want for their children, it seems. And these are all important parts of the Montessori philosophy and curriculum. We focus on grace and courtesy, and emotional development is a big part of the curriculum. So when a child misbehaves, we try to find out why, and instead of punishment. I see that I need to get to the end. I'm not going to go through all the slides because I think this is one of the most important slides. Montessori is amazing, and I can talk all day about it, but how we can build it on the island is basically by establishing micro schools in every neighborhood. With this method, make it accessible to everyone and build communities through these small schools in the neighborhoods, and the neighborhoods can collaborate. And that's the way we come to a more united island and better educated people. And that's, in my opinion, how a small island not only survives, but thrives. Thank you. Yes. Could your school become a pilot program? Yeah.
Awesome, thank you so much. That was really cool to hear. And I learned a lot about the school. I think I need to do a bit of research or additional research, but you made me super curious about it. And I was also thinking of our conversation we had right before the presentation started, and that you mentioned, well, this is basically what they're doing in the Netherlands all the time. And I was like, yeah, that makes a lot of sense, because every time I went to school here, or like a daycare or something like that, that was exactly what it would look like, the way you described it. Mm-hmm. So what is completely normal here, it seems, is still a foreign or, not really integrated concept on Curaçao. And I see there are some questions in the group, so maybe we can go to those a little bit first. Gwendell is asking, is there a possibility to implement the Montessori method in our national education system? And I think a question that I have for you as well is very much related to this, is asking, what has been the biggest challenge you have encountered thus far when trying to expand the Montessori system on Curaçao? Or maybe even start it even.
Well, do I answer Gwendol's answer first? So unfortunately, I don't think you can implement it in the national education system if you mean just adapting what we have to suit this method, because it's completely different. It requires a different mindset, a different environment. So it's not that you would have to tear everything, like the physical buildings, down, but you do need to go through a transformation. So, and I think that's the problem with our educational system in general, is that we try to patch up all sorts of leaks, but it's just broken. And there are alternatives out there that may cost money. Of course, everything costs money. You have to invest if you want a return, but it will be more worthwhile, I think. So I hope I answered that question. And your question was the challenges. Well, there were many. First of all, trying to explain the method to someone else here on the island. We seem to have a very close-minded community, so people tend to want to relate it back to something we have, or they're like, well, can we just, kind of like Gwendol's question, how can we just stick to the old ideas and try to incorporate something new? And it's very difficult to explain that, this is something completely different. But it shouldn't be scary.
But what would it require then to upscale the method on the island? That's what I'm thinking now.
Well, I think time. People need to see results. They need to visit. It's hard to imagine. It's hard to imagine. Yes, exactly, what you have never seen. And actually, one very wise person told me that Montessori is like seeing. So once you know the method, it's like you cannot unsee it anymore. And you look at everything else and you're like, oh my God, how are you living like this? So yes, they need to see it in action. And we actually had some very fun things planned that were derailed, but I think we just have to get back on track and really show everyone what it's all about, let people experience it, and just give more information about the results as well, because we have all been brought up in the conventional system, and we're all looking at, what are the results, the academic.
You already have, have a program running now, right?
Yeah, we do.
Yeah.
We have from 12 months up to 6 years. So it's the toddler environment and the primary environment. And the kids are able to spend a day in this environment, and it's really amazing. Due to circumstances, I'm actually assisting the toddler teacher right now, and it's just amazing how these kids adapt and how independent and capable they are.
Nice.
They just come in with all the corona related hygiene measures. They have adapted in like a few days. They know what they're doing, and they prepare their own snacks. When something spills, which of course happens because they're toddlers, and they clean it up. When someone needs help, they help them. When it's very collaborative. It's so beautiful. And you can imagine these people when they're 18, 25, 30, 40, that's the society you're going to have. And I'm so excited to see that. I hope I live long enough to
You will. So Daniela, thank you so much. I think a couple of things that you said really struck me, and I think especially the seeing and showing people the alternatives. I think that's also something we hope to do with Innovation C, is really highlighting these new innovations and highlighting the positive side of these changes. Because for everybody, changes are scary. Even for us that are quite adaptive, even for us, it's not nice to see something change 180 degrees from really teaching to teaching yourself. But I think if we can really show the good things about it and show how it progresses, that people will adapt it much easier. So let's definitely dive more into this during the roundtable later on. I think you're definitely in the line with the empowerment and taking responsibility, but also giving people the tools and the trust to take their responsibility.
Exactly.
And that's wonderful. So thank you very much. I'll see you again in a bit. I'm now going to welcome Gwendell on stage. In the meantime, if you have any questions for the speakers, you can also use the question section, and you can answer it, and you can ask any question there, and we can go into it specifically during the roundtable. Let's see. There you are. Goodbye, Gwendell. How are you doing?
Hi there, Luke. I'm doing good. I'm a little bit, I don't think I'm nervous, but it's like you have always like the butterflies coming up, and it feels as if, it's something new, but it's something that I've been doing all the time. But even though the topic has been pretty much interesting, and I'm very happy that the previous speakers are also very aligned. So with what I'm going to present right now, and I really hope to give a very nice insight and also have a lot of interaction with everybody who's here. A special shout out to Andrew, Andy, and also Gilberto, because thanks to them I'm also here today. And I can only thank you guys for having this platform, creating this for us, and showing us something different. That there's always place for innovation. We come from a small island, but we're big and huge in ideas and talent. And we have to put emphasis on this. We have to make the best of what we have in the moment.
Without a doubt. I'm really happy that you're here. I know you're a busy guy, and you were the busiest speaker ever. For the people in the chat, Gwendell is a person that can't even open his WhatsApp messages because he's so popular. People will start flooding in. But you're a real people's person. I think that's why people like speaking to you, and you're an inspirator. So take the stage. We'll talk again in a bit. Good luck, mate.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm going to share immediately my, let's choose this media. Yes. Hopefully everybody can see this. Uh, yes. I called my presentation today the unique sharp position. It's the way we can conquer, Louis, the next generation, the socio-economic foundation. And it's very important for us to see this, that we are the driver of the future. We can take things ahead if we really take things by our hands. So don't let it for us to get a seat, but take the seat at the table. My name is Gwendell Mercelina. For those who don't know me, I'm 31 plus, uh, almost 32. The 23rd of July, I'll be celebrating 32. I'm an entrepreneur, media consultant. I studied media and communications at Webster Leiden. I did an abroad study. And before that, I did also law, associate bachelor at the UNA back then. I'm a politician, independent politician, already for 3 years. I entered the politics scene 4 years ago on the 12th of June. Most of everybody know the story. After I entered the scene, um, it became a very much known during this period that because I entered the political scene, that the grand arena, I got obstant de vote. So they fired me immediately from the company I was working as digital media consultant for, and that was something that made me really aware, and also a bit um, concerned about what's happening, what's really the ideal we have on this island. um, just because also it made me realize how somebody can feel. For example, right now in Corona, we can in the COVID period, we see how much people losing their jobs and still think they don't have any perspective. And for me, I took another step into life, because for those who know me, I'm half blind. I cannot see with my left eye, only 10% of sight. And after my first surgery, I got vitiligo. So I'm a vitiligo barrier. The only patch you can see is this one right to my face. But that those things made me stronger in life. 10 years ago, also, I started a foundation, which is the We Lead Foundation. It's a nonprofit youth-led organizations. It's a project platform. We have created several projects, such like Curaçao Our Nation, which has won World Appreciative Inquiry local research prize in 2013. We are part of the Global Change Makers as partners. We have also on the island for the sustainable development goals field advocates. That's projects that we have created regarding the 2030 agenda, such as the AIDS HIV project, Youth Coalition. So we had national focal points for this specific. We created a Hobina Palabra radio program during these 10 years. Curaçao Carnival Diary. Most people know the project Curaçao Next Ambassador. So any project that a youngster wants to develop for them to be the builders of their nation, we as platform are the supporters. And as long as they have five specific pillars that work on nation building, we will always be the support of that. And since after I became unemployed, I started officially as entrepreneur, and I created my own creative service management firm, and I also do business consultancy. In that case, I gave workshops, I do projects, I work on business plans, I do a lot of on communication and media, what I have studied. So yes, I do I do a lot and very much, but I try to manage it also with a lot of love. So let me go back. The current road on what we are right now. Um, if I can answer, ask any of you guys, what would you like to see in your society? Most of us have the hope, just like I said, the hope to have a problem free society. That's a desire of every individual. And that's why it's very important to analyze the social economics foundation and the social economical foundation, just like the topic is. And that's the relationship between the economic activity and the social life of people. Sometimes people, and here on the island, they don't see it that they can go together. But it's as much important as you can see. COVID made us very much aware that um, without any economic activity, you cannot even take good care of yourself. So the economy is also very important for having a healthy lifestyle, a healthy social life. So defining that, what are some of the social and economic problems you think we have on the island? Because I've pointed some tackle points for what this presentation is, but what do you think also are social and economic problems that we are defining right now? Why do you think they are a menace or a danger? Because the Curaçao's current economy is pretty much limited on natural resources. It has a, let's they say, a poor soil, um, an inadequate water supplies, because you have a lot of problems in the way of how we also handle with budgetary problems, the complicate reform of our health system and also our education system, just like you have heard in the previous presentation. But most of our economy is represented by 90%, was represented by 90% of the oil refinery, which has collapsed. Other things we have is tourism, offshore finances, um, but the transshipment of petroleum, those are things. But what you can see is that the cost of living is ever increasing, and the shortage of funds is an very much usual problem on the island. And that brought, for the tackle points, we have poverty, illiteracy, and I take a very much specific um, point of view here, that we have a problem with financial illiteracy in our people. Most of our people do not know how to save. We live above our own expectancy of what we have. Corruption, it's a huge problem. For example, like today, we're seeing in the national parliament, they're discussing the screening sweat, which for me, in this case, it's not the most important thing we have, because since 2012, that screening sweat has been made, of course, with its let's say lack and spaces like any other law created by human being. But it's impossible that it's that important in a time of crisis that we have to discuss how we can change it right now. It's screened like more than 8 cabinets, and we're having the courage to make it an importance right now. So again, for me, corruption is a very point we have to tackle. Unemployment, crazy. I'll just go showing you the rate that we have currently projected by the CBS. Health crisis, of course. Right now, the lack of tourism, the declining of export of our things. This is a topic I'm coming back on it. It's drug trafficking and crime. Most of the people don't know that we as a country have been a transit point, just like for drug trafficking, for quite, like, let's say, in about 3 to 4 decades. But after into the in the millennium, there have been some changes into that, that made it even worse for our economy to keep on thriving as such, because it was disturbing, just like the offshore. It was disturbing the Dutch kingdom relation. But um, just like we have been used as a portal for slave trade, we have been used also for drug trade, because we apparently, due to research is done, health research is done, we don't have so much drug usage on the island, but much more it's the trafficking of the drugs that became a business. The comfortable economical system that we have been pretty comfortable of having the points like tourism, oil refinery being the most important things for us, and not using the advantage for being a very much diverse island country to go further into to searching into more different type of industries, and building it up to be reliable and sustainable for the future. And of course, the fear culture, the mindset. Many of you guys already mentioned it. I see it's the mindset that we have, but also the fear. The fear. It's a culture of fear that you can see. It manifests in all levels of our country, of our people. And it's very difficult for them to realize that it's not only the fear of not doing anything, but it's the fear of punishment, because we have been taught at schools for if you don't do this right, you get punished. And very, 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 let's say, and in an incentive wise, we have been um, priced for what we are doing right. So most of the time, you get at school, everybody is going to for a six just to get um, a free pass, but we're not going for the 10 to be the best we can be in everything we can do. The lack of knowledge of the island, of course, patriotism, if I can make that, the lack of confidence in capabilities, those are very, very much the things we are in our current road. As you can see, pre-COVID, the poverty rate was something above 25%. Um, we don't really know the exact amount we right now, but they are they are seeing it forward to become it's above the 35% due to COVID, but hopefully it's not. And post COVID, CBS just did a research that the situation right now with unemployment from post COVID, it was 21%. Uh, Under the youngster, it was something above 32% under the youngsters, something crazy for just this small island. And right now, post COVID, after the research CBS done on a very on the online method, most of the people on the island got it through an SMS or through an email. It's 37.1%. So COVID made us very much aware how we have to take directions into life, what we gotta do, the examples we gotta. Although we took very much great measures on the public health for not to have a fallout from the coronavirus pandemic. Everybody knows Dr. Ezi Gerstenbloed, which is not a political figure, but he became a political figure because he was the one who carried as project leader um, um, the how we should handle the pandemic. But everything is in the hands of politics. So we should never forget that the responsibility has been laid by politics, trias politica. That's why people vote. So the measures of the lockdown have made us realize that it's time for us to be more hospitable to our people. The call of service. it's a call on the corporate responsibility. Most of our big companies here, you could have seen that they're not aware of their corporate responsibility on the island, and it's very much important for us to make a great emphasis on this. And also the kindness to the less fortunate. Thanks to, for example, organizations like Voedselbank and Samenwerkende Hulporganisaties, um, Mitaduna, a project we helped during the pandemic. But it's it's so crazy to see, but at the same time, so beautiful how we could have worked together and being more in solidarity with each other for the less fortunate. And even though people you could have never imagined that they were having a good and redelijk type of life, become somebody who would have asked for um, the voedselpakket, so the food package. It's crazy, but it's still not finished because I think it's the start of the COVID energy. We have to be prepared and do the best we can to handle it. But also these days, you can see another thing that's giving us directions for us, the next generation that are seeing things, that are making things possible, and that are not waiting to take the seat. The Black Lives Matter. It's a mobilization that didn't wait after we all know the George Floyd incident, but it made worldwide awareness for us to make possible the call to equality. Because even though we may think the human race is one race, we share one type of blood, or one kind of blood, that is red. And it's incredible for you to realize that it's been a systematic, structural, but also educational racism incentivated into us, because we don't see it as long as we don't feel it. And of course, for us in Curacao, it's quite incredible in that sense that 50 years ago, 51 years ago, we had the Lucha 30 de May that made it possible not only for the labor problems, but also the racial injustice back then. And that made for the Black people, the Black inequality, to get a better voice. Just like the gender equality in that sense, that a woman got a voice, woman could have vote, woman got positions, became the prime minister of our country, Netherlands Antilles back then, the first woman within the Dutch kingdom, because the Netherlands still doesn't have a woman as a prime minister. Haven't seen a woman as a prime minister yet. But that says already the way our country have been taking directions, and we should have not left it for the other generations to do it if we didn't trespass the education correctly for them to see. And also the respect we need to have for each other and the love that we have to share. Um, I'll share this quote. You never change, we can all be leaders, John. Yeah. You never change things by fighting the existing reality. To change something, build a new model that makes the existing model absolute. This is Buckminster Fuller, and I think this is the way we gotta work towards the new building of a new social economical foundation. Why? Why is it so important? Because we have to see that the economy is at the service of the community. Most of us see the economy as something apart, as something that we don't see it together. But thanks to, for example, a method like the Doughnut economy, like Joeri mentioned before, you can see the economy is part of the service to humanity. And that's why we have to readjust our focus. We have to reinforce positivism in the sense that incentivize prices, make our talents be more aware of what they can do. Um, Prize them, prize our youngsters, give them the best seat that they can, but also support. For example, this platform, the Innovation Seat, don't forget, just take a picture while we're doing the panel and support. Write something good about it. Let it become a the word of mouth on social media, because as important for us to see that we have to support, because there's a lot of good happening, but the attention we're giving to the negativity makes us think that everything is going wrong. The socio-economic wellness, why is it so important? Because it's more of an individual responsibility for us to see that if I cannot make sure that I'm happy today, I cannot make anybody around me happy, not even my family, not even my neighborhood, not even my school. So that's the most important thing we have to do. So reinforce our mentality, reinforce or by doing good and going well, because these ways we can challenge the comfortability, embrace the most important thing we have as this island, our human capital, one of the greatest things we have. Gaining back our brains with what we have, because most of the things, thanks to the brain drain we have, people think that Curacao has nothing to offer back. But the freedom you get in Curacao, that cannot be bought up until now. And we have to protect that. The only way we can protect that is having the brains back, giving back to our community, and not forgetting that the investment made in your future was to give back to your community. And giving back to the community does not necessarily mean that physically you have to be on the island, because I see Curacao, for example, for me, has been a trampoline to get into all type of um, all type of organizations doing a lot of stuff for in regional but also international platforms. So it's a trampoline to the future. And that's why it's important for us to see that responsibility. Education, the education on engagement and participation, the importance of participation and the role we have as citizens, for example, in voting, and voting correctly, not voting for stuff, not voting for materialism, for individuality, but voting for the cause. I believe, for example, I want to give this guy the chance because it's someone who I can trust with his message, but not only his message, but his actions, what he did in life, what he's going to do, and what he's doing. So the government, as well as every citizen, single citizen, has to play a very important role to bring positive change. Increase effectiveness of public administration through the rule of law and prevention of corruption, for real. Competitiveness by optimizing the use of natural resources that we have, increasing regional cooperation and integration, and developing investment promotion policies, and also industrialization strategies. Being sustainable, being and working on a sustainable and inclusive economic centered development, poverty reduction, and modernization of the economy. Those are the most important things we have to do on this new road. And that's why our focus has to be, for what I can see, on three pillars for our economy, to have a sustainable but also a very inclusive economic centered um, development. The service sector has to be our main point. That's why the human capital is important. And the service sector has also much to do with tourism, but make it an experiential tourism. Curacao has a lot of culture. So make that patriotism something important for our people to export. Our sustainable tourism, the creative industry, technology, biotechnology, and digital technology, just like you can see. That's been very much important, and everything has become possible after COVID. That, for example, we could firstly make takeouts or order online. But due to COVID, everything became possible. It has always been possible, but our mindset, and thanks to COVID, the direction that it gave us made it even more possible. And last but not least, I think agriculture. I'm a very fervent advocate that the cannabis industry, as the regulated recreational but also medicinal, is very much important, and an industry that we can adopt right now as being part of the Dutch kingdom and not losing the momentum as Canada, California, and other countries are doing. So we cannot. And the green economy and blue economy. So yes, focus on giving our best in everything, because nothing lasts forever. That's what we can see. Um, as I can see, my minutes are almost over, and I'm always at your service. This is my phone number, my email. You can always get in contact with me through Facebook, Telegram, um, Snapchat, LinkedIn, Twitter, whatever you want, and whatever we can do for each other. So I hope this insight has been beautiful for us to build up a better and a new social economic foundation for our country, because we really need it, and we need you guys to build this, and it's only in the hands of the new generation, because we cannot expect anything from the old generation anymore.
Thank you very much, Gwendol. Don't reach
Thank
out to him on WhatsApp. That's not going to work. Use the other platforms, but definitely
but
do
you
get
can
in touch
always
with
call.
Gwendol.
You can always call and give me a shout out, and it's going to help.
Sorry for interrupting your presentation with the pop-up. That's one of the projects that we have been working on, is creating a digital community platform. And as you were discussing how to get in touch, I think this is a good way for someone like you to contribute and still keep an eye on there without having to go one-on-one with everybody. So if you want to join that community, I sent the link in the actions, and I'll send the link again in a bit. But when they're going back, what really inspired me was that it has always been possible. And you mentioned that's created a better future and a better socioeconomic foundation. And I think after today, it's already happening. It's not something that we need to start doing. We just need to continue and support each other. What was the thing that really stood by you today from all these presentations?
What has been stuck? The very much importance that we have to really readjust and reform our mindset. And it's possible collectiveness, but also individually. So if I think that, for example, if you can see how Danielle started her Montessori school by making the method possible on the island without thinking the things that have been very hard on her, but making it possible, even though it's possible. So the way we're thinking always that very negative on the negative narrative that we have on what's happening on the islands, or what's going around, um, that's not the right mentality, because there's so much good stuff. And thanks to this platform, you guys are giving it a stage again for people to see how many people are doing a lot of stuff. We tend to forget that the movement and the things that are shaping us, maybe it looks like it's taking so long, but if you shape our differences compared to the world, just like I gave the example of 51 years ago, we already did the fight that the people are doing right now for George Floyd. 51 years ago, the the generation back then did it for us, and we have to give it the most importance, that put it into our education, seeing that the economy is part of us, but making it a very much important topic to not forget For example, in COVID, we saw that health is only the most important thing. No, it's not. We can have an easy, but we need an easy for the social economic part also. So that's the most important thing we have to do to keep it on moving and not giving up and coming back with the brains, just like you're doing. You're living
As
in
we're
the
doing
next,
here.
but you're giving back. So everything we're doing, the donut economy, the incentives that we can do in supporting these ideas and talking about it, making it, making you, giving your platform a voice. So for me, that those there has been so much we have learned today, but I really hope it's
Awesome.
for the best and for the greatest thing we should be doing.
Without a doubt. Thank you so much, Gwendol. Before inviting the other speakers on stage, I want to give a little bit of an update about Innovation C as a movement in relation to creating a new socio-economic foundation. We're actually in the progress registering our own foundation on Curacao, so we can continue to, to put energy into this platform and continue to grow it sustainably. If you want to be involved in Innovation C in any way, as a speaker, as a coach, as a participant in the core team, whatever, you can reach us on the social media platforms at Innovation C or Innovation Cure. And if you have experience with running these projects like you are doing, Gwendol, for example, you're also invited to come to us and bring us positive news so we can share it with the rest of the community and the rest of the world.
Thank you very much.
I'm going to quickly invite the speakers on stage. You can, for the audience, this is the point where you can start asking questions. I already saw some really good ones coming by.
I have gotten so much questions that I hope I really answered them within my presentation. I'm reading them right now.
So I think let's wait for the other ones to come, but maybe you two can already reflect on this question. Thank you, all the presenters. If it's possible, yes. What practical steps do you recommend from here?
Well, in that sense, I've given much insight on practical steps, what we need to do in implementing for a better social economic foundation. For example, the three focus points, we really need to give incentives, agriculture, the service sector, you know, name it. But those are the things we have to do really is giving our focus, and don't forget that the economy is here for service to the community. So it's all a part of the donut, just like Yuri mentioned before.
Wonderful. Stacy, welcome.
Thank you.
Do you want to give a reflection on that? Where should we go next?
I would. So I think I'm not going to keep it too long, but I think what is an important message that all of you shared is when we're thinking about creating new foundations for, let's just keep it a Curaçao society right now. There's been this term that kind of popped up recently. Again, it's not a new term, but it's being used again a lot the past couple of months. And it's called intersectional. The term is called intersectional. And basically what intersectional means, or what it stands for, is that everything kind of needs to come together. So no system or no idea, no foundation stands alone. So we've been talking about the economy, we've been talking about education, we've been talking about governance, vision for the island. But all of you mentioned the environment, the people, justice, social inequalities that we're seeing, and how we need to unite all these elements if we really want to develop forward. And that's kind of the thing about, thinking intersectionally. That's kind of my academic spin on all of this that I've been hearing, is if we continue to think in intersectional ways, then it just makes a lot of sense. You need to stop thinking that there's only one way or one way forward, or that you need to do things by yourself, or only focus on one of the foundations. So that for me was very, very nice to hear from all of you. and that it came so naturally, without even thinking about this term or thinking about, the intellectual part of it. It's something that comes naturally, right? It's very intuitive. So that's something that I really enjoyed about this. And maybe it's also nice to go into some questions, Luke.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah?
I think maybe to give the other two speakers a chance at that as well, maybe starting with Joeri.
Yeah.
With an economy, it's not easy to start a new economy. You're often, you still have these barriers from the traditional economy that you're part of. So how do you think would be the best way to start a donut economy on Curaçao? Would it be from the top down, where the government is like, hey, we are endorsing this donut economy and we would like to achieve this? Or do you think it's more from the bottoms up, where we just start with it and as it grows, it will slowly, or should it be kind of both ways?
Good question, Luke. Thanks. Yeah, I like to be really practical. I think that you always have to try to align interests. So, I mean, what does a politician want? He wants to win the elections. So, if a politician sees that there are enough people who, when voting, would look at the application of certain economic models, then it's interesting for them. So we just have to make sure that the movement becomes big enough. So I think you start bottom up, but to make it urgent as urgent as possible, we need platforms like this platform, and also to showcase everything that's being done on the island, and also the philosophy behind it, so that our politicians become aware that the status quo is not going to work anymore.
Yeah.
Because otherwise you'll be having the same problems that we had all along. And I don't know who's paying for the campaigns for our political parties, so I don't know what agenda they have. But I do know that the people that are working on these projects in the field, that they are using their passion and dedication to make a different island. So we just have to pressurize them as much as we can. And then next year at the elections, we'll see where we're at. And maybe we'll also just vote for Gwendell. It's also possible.
Yeah. Can I add to that something real quick, Luke?
Yeah, definitely. Go for it.
So what I really like about your presentation, Joeri, but all of the others as well, is that all of you also made a reference to history in some respect. So remembering what happened in the past, remembering where our current ways of thinking, doing, believing, where those are coming from, and I think that's a very important thing also kind of to link into the question that's been asked in the public, like, what do we do or how do we convince others to kind of join us in this movement? I think a very important part of this is explaining where these original ideas or ways of doing are coming from. Some person or like society came up with it at some point, like you explained, Joeri, in your presentation, like, the economies that we're living now are very much drive to, like a couple of people want to make a lot of money, over the backs of other people, and that's not something that we necessarily want to support. But if you're not aware that that is kind of the foundation of the economy that we're living with today, then it also makes it's more difficult, I think, to convince people to think of new ways or rethink, these existing systems. And the same goes for education. The same goes for governance and politics. Like, should we really only look towards the government to see or to think, okay, they are the ones responsible for our future? Or is it also up to the civil society to participate actively in this process to help develop the future?
And I think, Stacey, when talking about changing minds, I think this is a good transition to Danielle.
Yeah.
You didn't get to the part of Montessori not only being for children, but I think it would be wonderful if you could go into that a little bit and highlight how Montessori, or at least a more open and connected approach, can help reshape people's thinking.
Yeah, so one way to describe Montessori is that it's an aid to life. So it does start from birth, and there's a curriculum until I think 18 years, and that's still developing. But it's basically preparing children to become adults. And once you have that mindset, what you can call mastery mindset or whatever other popular term you like, that, things, if you work hard, if you do your part, if you're kind to others, and you collaborate, then you can achieve a lot. If you have that mindset, you will continue to learn. And that's what I think the most beautiful part of the Montessori educational method or philosophy is, that you you get that from the get-go. So you don't have to try to get that mindset. It's just how you are. And so Montessori is for the child. It's focused on the child, but the impact is much bigger. And so once people have this mindset, then we also see that in the Montessori world, you're going to see where else you can apply the same principles, the same ideas. And currently, there's a lot going on in the field of dementia, to treat dementia patients through the Montessori method, because they need to relearn a lot of skills that young children also need to learn. And I'm sure, like if you imagine it, there are many other ways to apply it as well. So it's kind of, yeah, what they say, like it's something you can do your entire life. I wasn't born in the Montessori system, but it changed my life because I'm trying to get to that point where maybe our toddlers now just live like that. But it is something that's for everyone, and it keeps growing, and it's very beautiful, actually. And I think that's a mindset that, everyone keeps talking about mindset, and that's the foundation of everything, I think. So
Wonderful. So you're speaking about mindset, and that kind of reminds me about the example that Joeri gave of politicians kind of following what the people want. So kind of a question directed to you, Gwendell. I know you're also a politician yourself, and you're running to be voted on. And I'm wondering, how do you balance kind of what you envision for the island and what the people want right now? And how do you make sure that you can balance that in a way that you can still represent them, but that you're also like, hey, this really is in our best interest, and this really is the vision we would like to go for?
For some reason, your mic is on mute.
He's muted. He's muted. I'll unmute him. Yeah, you can go now.
No, it's still.
You're muted, Gwendell. Maybe try to unmute yourself. If not, I'm going to let Joeri speculate on this question.
Great question, by the way.
We don't hear you. It seems maybe disconnect your mic and connect it again, or close the program and open it again. So I'll let Joeri speculate on the question for now.
Wow.
How would you do it if you were running for
Well, that's really one of the reasons why I don't want to be in politics, because it's really difficult with it. First of all, I have a lot of problems with combining democracy with capitalism. And then there's another problem, which is the election cycle. So if you're like Gwendell, a visionary, and you have an idea of the future of Curaçao, maybe for the next 15 or 20 years, then probably the first years will be like a bumpy road. So, the question of balancing that is really difficult, because you have to convince people that even though the first period might be a bit difficult because you're in a transition phase and it's messy and all of that, that things will be better afterwards. But then you have the risk, obviously, that other political parties will benefit in the long run from the things, the seeds that you've sown. So either you have to be a politician with no ego, or you have to be, ready to maybe lose the next elections to let somebody else take over, or you just have to make sure that you're as charismatic as Gwendell, and you just convince them that it's just the way to go.
But I think you're making a very good point, Joeri, because what you mentioned about ego, I think that is one of the fundamental challenges that we face as well within society. When we're talking about politics, but also when we're talking about education. Teachers wanting some teachers, let me not generalize, but some teachers wanting to remain the boss and have that authoritative, role within the system, but also within the economy. Few people wanted to be the richest and not caring about the inequalities that exist. So
I agree. Sorry, you inspire me, because I think it's really about leadership. I think the old notion of being a leader was this authoritarian person with a top-down look, who would impose his ideas and would just, manage by fear and all that. And that's all old school. I think the real leader of today is somebody who is really a servant in the truest sense of the word. And we just have, I'm just going to say it here, we just have to get rid of that whole katibu isyong mentality that we have, that either we're a servant or we're the one imposing on the other ones. We're all just serving ourselves and our nation, because we see each other all throughout the year. We just keep on meeting the same people and seeing the same faces. So that means that we're all together in this.
Yeah.
Can I
Is that
say
something you also? Yeah, Danielle. Yeah.
Because I totally agree with you, but how can we change that if that's exactly what you learn at school? So like at school, the teacher is like, you have to do this right now.
Mhm.
And I'm the one who decides when you go to the bathroom. I decide. So everything is like really, really, let's say, guided, and you don't get to practice that. So how can an adult who was brought up in the conventional system actually become this other adult who isn't
Yeah.
authoritarian?
Mhm.
Can I say something about this? I think education is not just in school. You know, I think that if you look at our generation, I mean, we obviously not we're not all the same age, but I think we were basically brought up by propaganda. You know, our parents were maybe a little bit less authoritarian than their parents, but
Mhm.
our propaganda would always tell you buy this and eat that, and this is important for you, and this is how you become cool. So, and at the same time, we had a lack of national content, you know, content impapimento, positive content, whatever it may be. I think that's also education. You know, if we have more content, be it movies or books or whatever that really relate to the people and are about a local context, that also
Mhm.
opens your eyes and opens your mind. And
Yeah.
together with that, obviously the new educational system, like the structural reform, but also just the content and the whole narrative has to change. And that's also for us to create. And that's why I think the creative industry also plays a major role.
Yeah.
Definitely. And I think bringing the leaders together, I agree with you completely. We're all leaders. Right now, we're here with 30 people. I mean, they're all making a difference just by being here and interacting. And we all have the power to shine light to the positive things and to contribute to the positive things. Um, I see Danielle sharing a vision. I mean, this is exactly what it's about.
Mhm.
Anybody can bring a
Yeah.
vision, and we collectively create a vision. It's just as much your story, yours, it's mine. It's as much Daniela's future as it is ours. I mean, we're
Sure.
really in this together, and if we can shape that culture and cultivate each other's ideas and learn from each other, then all these ideas and projects will slowly emerge and grow. And I think all of us here share the vision that Curacao can yeah, I think we all have kind of a paradise vision of how Curacao can become because we see all the positive possibilities here. Um, so maybe getting a little bit more practical. How
Mhm.
can someone watching now contribute to the Doughnut economy, for example, Yuri?
Well, they can just let me know that they want to be in. That's a good thing. And there are different ways to be in, right? I mean, if you have even if you're not a person who wants to look at the academical side or the project side, maybe you have projects that you're working on yourself that you think fit into the model, then that's also great because it's not just about presenting a framework, it's also about presenting the content of that framework. So it's not just saying, look, this is how we want to run our economy, but it's also to showcase all these projects that make the donut economy a reality.
Yeah.
So I basically need everybody, you know. I need the designers, I need the project managers, the engineers, the kunukeros, you know. Like you just mentioned Daniel. I went to see Daniel's plantation the other day in Butterberg. It was so incredibly inspiring, you know, because the green colors of their plantation are just mesmerizing. You know, I haven't ever seen this in Curacao with plantains that don't get any water for 7 days and they're green. You know, I mean the leaves, not the plantains.
Mhm.
So all of that is so incredibly inspiring. So the donut is not just about presenting like a pretty maybe boring framework
Yeah.
for the study books, but it's just about showcasing what's really going on. So if you want to
Mhm.
contribute, just let me know what you're doing. Send me an email or a phone number, and we'll hook you up.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think both of you are such great examples of exactly what Daniel's saying and what we've all been saying is that there's no use in coming up with another document of 300 pages writing down this new vision or idea of this is what we should do, blah 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 blah.
Yeah.
It's about doing the work, making the effort, making the time investments, even if it's a little bit, and that's also kind of the beauty of Innovation C. Like for example, I'm busy with several things, but I have committed a couple of hours a week to Innovation C, and that already is making a difference. And I think if everybody would be willing to contribute a couple of hours to the Montessori system, to the Doughnut economy, to platforms like Innovation C or other initiatives, you don't have to spend all your time. You know, you don't have to be fully committed. I mean, if you could do that, great. But if you don't, that's fine. Even if it's just a couple of hours a week or a month, that already, you know, brings us ahead. And I also want to say something to Danielle, and maybe see how you feel about it, Danielle. One of my professors is a professor in history, and he's quite known in the political field, especially in The Hague, but especially, you know, when it comes to the kingdom and stuff. And one of the things that he's been advising for in his entire career, and he's almost retiring right now, is that um, the only like one of the biggest and most important investments that we need to make as a society, or as the kingdom, as a country, is towards our education. And he also heard, you know, he got a lot of, well, one of the reasons why very few people or politicians were not willing to do that was because they said what Joeri was mentioning earlier, saying, well, if I'm going to make this investment now, you know, the fruits of it are going to be long after my term is over. So, you know, I'm not going to do that. And then my professor would always say, yeah, but the time is passing anyway. You know, you can also decide to make that commitment, because the time is going to pass, right? So the time is, and you need to make the change. So
Yeah,
is
and
that
I
something
think
that you say as well?
yeah, I think in the comments as well, I was interacting with the participants, and so yeah, so whatever action you take now, whether that's a big action like, I don't know, giving cold hard cash to the cause, or other equally important things like talking about it, or you know, questioning things, or you know, doing whatever you can do, you will start to have the effect now already. I mean, we started this with whatever funding we had. People started collaborating, and that's how you create a movement. You have to start somewhere and just keep going, even though sometimes it's hard. You just keep going, and that you will see how people get impacted, how more people get on board, and it will take time. But you need to do it now. Otherwise, you'll just wait for 20 years and be like, oh, 20 years ago, we wanted to do this, and let's do it
Exactly.
now. And
And
you'll waste.
and Daniela, I think what you highlighted so beautiful is that it's not only about the children. I think, especially with education, I think it's a flawed view to say, oh, it will only have benefits in 20 years, because it's having an impact on the children now, and that has an impact on their parents and their friends and their so yeah, again, maybe to highlight, let's really change the way people evaluate society as well. I think this is also a common topic here among all of us. It's like, if we don't measure the right things, we never know how we're doing. If we're measuring economy by just plain GDP without looking at anything else, we're going to fail to succeed. If we're looking at education only as the result of how many people get employment in 20 years, then of course we're not going to reap the benefits now. But we can
And
make a difference now, and we're already doing that. I
yeah, and
really
even
hope.
in the traditional economic system, I'm able to like motivate how we can benefit now, later, in 5 years, 10 years, 20 years. So the information is out there. People just have to want to do it.
Yeah.
And let me just add just one thing, and I also believe in what we call a tipping point. So maybe we're not that visible because we're not in the mainstream or whatever. We have our own platforms though, and this movement, if you want to call it that way, is definitely growing. And we only have 160,000 or maybe a little bit more inhabitants on the island, but we also have our people in Holland from like Stacy and Luke will also contribute. So if we can get a couple of thousand people, we're there. We don't really need to get to everybody just right now because we will get people through other people. This collateral impact, what all of us together are doing, is much bigger than what we see or think. It's like an iceberg. So what Danielle said was really
Yeah.
interesting, because exactly the same thing that Luke told me a couple of days ago about consistency, just making sure that every day you make, even if it's the slightest improvement, the slightest input, it will lead to staggering results over time, and we'll be blown away by the things we're going to achieve. I'm just sit there and watch and just contribute. It's going to be incredible.
Yeah.
Awesome. Before giving the stage back to Gwendell with the spicy question,
Yeah.
I think going back into that tipping point, I agree with you. I think we're getting closer and closer without realizing it that much every time. already with Innovation C, for example, it started actually 2 years ago with a small conference without any large vision behind it. And now it has grown over the past 3 months from one conference to almost a community of 700 people that are that are subscribed to our mail list and that want to be updated about this. I think we had in total 900 people attend the digital conferences so far, and I think the next steps would be creating more content that's distributed wider, having workshops, having projects. So it's only the start, and I agree with you. Once we have these intersections and once these things start to connect, they're all going to reinforce each other, and it's going to really change the way things are going in Curaçao. So with that, Gwendell, the question again, I'm really happy that you're back. How do you balance this innovative mindset that you have and the need that you have as a politician to be elected to be able to empower your vision?
I think the most important thing I have, it's because I feel it's my purpose. So within my life, everybody that knows me since I was small, they were always seeing a politician in me. So it's been like I'm answering my call. Very difficult because I'm someone who's also very rebellious. Most of you guys are those who know me. I've been After I became an independent politician, I started wearing locks. So for me, it was my way of tackling the establishment with their thoughts and things that they think, which is not. For example, the biggest establishment I have is my father. My father is a man that never anything of the next generation would be better than his generation. But he's the best coach for me in my life, and I can always. What I love about it is that I can prove him wrong by the things I do and the things I say and everything I can do. But politics is a pretty much the same but different way because you have to trust. And to trust, you have to trust also in shifting the establishment. So I can bring change, but the change has to start by shifting. I cannot bring change by being rebellious. I cannot bring down the house. I
Oh no. What is this?
Come back. Come back.
So this is something we need to solve all together, the internet connection in Curaçao. So that's us down sometimes.
Oh no.
Yeah, but Gwendol, thanks for sharing your opinion there and
Thank
your
you,
thoughts.
Gwendol.
I wish we could listen more because I'm really curious now how you're going to run for how you're going to run the elections and if you're going to join a party and how we can collaborate and how we can propose your. Yes, you are. Okay, try to do it with hand signals. You're running for party. People should vote on you. We got it. Yeah, of course.
Yeah, right.
And you can also type if you want.
Good point.
Great. So I see that we're almost done. We only have 2 minutes left. One small project I wanted to highlight in terms of this intersection is a project we're doing next weekend. So not this one, but the one afterwards. We're working with Ronald from Reyne to plant an syntropic forest. And we're still looking for volunteers who want to help plant this forest. And as a reward, you'll be one of the first people to test out our complementary currency. It's a digital small economy that we're kickstarting. So you can do two things. You can learn about syntropic farming and how you can become self-sufficient, and you can learn how to earn these complementary currencies, the digital points, to empower a new economy. So it's two things that want this. If you want to be involved, reach out to us. We'll connect you with the right people. Before going, I would like to thank all of you. This was, for me, one of the most insightful sessions. And although we don't have as many people as before, I think people are picking their lives up again. These sessions are a bit harder to attend. I think it's really important that we keep this consistency and that we keep supporting each other and telling the stories that we want to get heard. So please, if you have any final remarks, final thank you, please take the stage and let us know before we close it off.
Well, I want to say thank you for this opportunity. I really enjoyed talking to you and learning about other aspects that I've been talking about as well, via the angle of education. And yes, I think you have a great group here, and I think together we can definitely make changes. And I think, well, personally, through education, especially early childhood, that is the starting point for me. But it will impact all the other things, and I love it that there are more people doing their part so that we get the snowball effect. So awesome.
Wonderful. Joeri, anything to add?
Yeah, thanks again. Really great and inspiring to be a part of this platform today. And I just want to make sure that people are not scared by the economic terms that I've used and all of that. If you have a passion for Curacao, you don't have to be an expert in anything. If you just want to contribute in whatever way to what we're doing, just let me know and reach out to me. I'll be more than welcome to work with you.
Awesome. Oh, I just wanted to ask Gwendell the last word.
No,
I think it's good. Stacy, you can close it off. Thanks all.
Yeah, no, thank you so much, all of you, for the amazing talks. It was super informational, super inspirational. Like I said, I love the merging, like the organic merging of the topics and the visions that all of you have, and that you're working towards. I think this is also one of the times in Innovation C that we are not only talking about ideas or visions that we have, but also speaking with people that are taking concrete action. I mean, we've been talking with various of them before, and I like that we continue with that energy. So that being said, feel free. I hope everybody will connect with you. I hope, Danielle, you will have more people visiting the Montessori's concept and think along with you to, upscale it, make more or design more Montessori schools. Joeri, let's expand the Doughnut economy group. We can use all the help we can get. And thanks everyone for being here tonight.
Also, thanks to everybody who tuned in and stayed all the way till the end. You're really part of this, and you're also helping shape these conversations here. And your interaction is really important. So thanks again. I see you all again in 2 weeks.
Yes.
Thank you.
Soon.
So bye-bye. Have a good day.
Bye.